This is one in a series of videos that explores the essential components of Colorado's multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS. In this video, we will introduce implementation science and how it supports the sustainability of evidence-based practices like MTSS.
I think there's real value in combining multi-tier systems of support with implementation science. So MTSS gives us the what that we should be doing so that all children can achieve their educational outcomes. Implementation science tells us how to do that so that teachers have the supports that they need to change their behavior to implement MTSS well. And the school knows and the district knows what it needs to do to create a hospitable environment for MTSS work to occur. So when you combine an evidence-based what with effective hows of implementation science with a context that enables that to occur, then I think we have a real chance at getting socially significant outcomes for students.
One thing about the implementation science combined with a multi-tiered system support, I think we are in a position within our society and educational system where there are much more demands on accountability. There are decreasing resources available through funding. The economic times are putting pressures on schools that are different than it has been in the past. So given that, we need to really make sure that we are implementing programs the best that we can and to make sure that they are the most efficient because we're not getting more resources, but we're asked to do more. So the combination will help us to address those needs.
Much of what guides the work we do in multi-tiered systems of support and PBIS and also literacy comes out of the organizational literature as well as the implementation science. In that literature, successful organizations are defined as groups of individuals who have a common language, so they know how to do the work, right? Or communicate about how to do the work. They also have a common vision about why they're there, what they're trying to accomplish. So common language, common vision. The third thing that's important about effective organizations like schools, like classrooms, like any business, is that they have a common routine or experience or way of doing business. So the language serves as a way to communicate, but it's embedded within a common experience. So some of our most successful schools are places where kids walk in the building. They know the routine from walking from the bus to the classroom. They know how to communicate with their teachers and their peers about expressing their needs. They also know what the school's about. It's about academic success and it's about developing their social skills. So successful schools, like successful businesses, are places where you have a common language, common vision, a common experience or routine, so that we're really efficient in being able to get our needs met and making sure we use our resources well.
Implementation science is a different look at how we do all of our work. So it's not an initiative, it's not a program, it's not a project. It's the way we do our work. So we've always wanted to use the best science around instructional practices so that students get evidence-based instruction. Now we want to back that up a level and say, what are the evidence-based ways that we know to change teacher behavior, to change school administrators' behavior, to help staff change their behavior so that the new practices can be put in place so that students can benefit. And as it turns out, there's great news about that because there is a common framework that can be used for any evidence-based practice, any well-defined, well-operationalized approach. You don't have to learn something new as you move from a math implementation to reading implementation.
I get excited about implementation science and the focus on implementation because I see it as a maturing of the field. When I was a teacher, I was just happy to get changes in students. And then as we learned more and we were more effective in changing student outcomes, we were much more concerned about how do we sustain that? How does that transfer from one school to the next school? How does it transfer from district to district? So by focusing on evidence-based practices and implementing well through implementation, we can just make sure that it goes beyond a classroom to a school to a district. The other thing we're concerned about is there's some concerns. We have problems if things are not implemented well, and when the programs are not implemented the way they should be, it's wasting time. We have such little time for addressing student needs, and we really need to take advantage of every bit of that as we can, and the implementation helps us to address.
Implementation is a process, not an event. Implementation will not happen all at once or proceed smoothly, at least not at first. This graphic represents discernible stages of the implementation of evidence-based practices. Knowing these stages and where the organization lives within these stages during implementation can help a system stay on track, recognize and solve problems, and implement effectively.
I view implementation science as a set of procedures, a process of ensuring that practices are implementing well, with fidelity that will endure over time. So the reason why implementation science is important is in the past, I think as educators, we rely on education to solve problems. And what I mean by that, if teachers are not teaching well, we send them to workshops. And we do a day-long training and hope that it sticks. Through the implementation science, we are actually engineering the educational environment to make sure that it's a hospitable environment for teachers to go back and implement well. So implementation science allows us to engineer the educational environment, and it makes it easy to do the practice as well by ensuring that there's proper information, by ensuring that the resources are available, that there's a priority to do this, to do the work, to make sure that there is skill development through coaching and training and professional development.
Implementation science is really important to education because it's the how to get the what done. So we know that we have evidence-based instructional practices that we know will produce better outcomes for students. We also now know that there are certain ways in which we can improve the confidence and competence of educators. Ways that work and ways that don't work. We now know that training is necessary and not sufficient. We now know that changing policies and funding streams, they're both necessary, they're not sufficient. We know that not all training is created equal, that there are certain training strategies that are effective. We know that coaching has to have some certain core features in order for it to be effective coaching. So we're looking to the research literature, the scientific literature, related to how do we select people to do these practices, how do we provide training and professional development, how do we coach, and how do we measure the fidelity. And there's a science behind all of that, and there's a science about how we create hospitable environments in schools and districts to do this work. So that's the kind of science that we're relying on to do the hard work of changing the behavior of well-meaning educators.